The official US Men's National Team Gold Cup roster was released on Thursday the 2nd. It's a mix of young players, veterans, and certain guys who really just shouldn't be included on this roster. So let's dig into it. For any of you guys who don't know me, my name is Brian McDonough and this is Club and Country. On this channel, we talk about all things US soccer, and before we get started, do yourself a favor, smash that like button. My goal is 100 likes for this video, and it is support from people like you that keeps me putting out content every week. Secondly, if you haven't done so yet, subscribe to this channel. But before you hit the subscribe button, listen closely because I'm giving back to my subscribers this month, and I want you to have the opportunity to win the following. International football is back. To celebrate the Euros, Club and Country is giving away the Panini Collector's Silver Box. This is a special bundle edition with a value of $195, and it could be yours for free. All you have to do to qualify for this giveaway is to subscribe to Club and Country on YouTube. Once you are subscribed, and listen closely, DM me a screenshot of your subscription on YouTube to my Twitter handle at club_country_US. And there is more. You can double your odds of winning by subscribing to me on Twitter at the same handle. All social media handles and further directions are in the description below. The winner will be announced live from my channel on July 11th. That's right, Club and Country will be providing you with live coverage of the Euro final. I'll be using a random picker wheel in order to select the winner. Even if you don't win the grand prize, I'm still awarding the second place finisher the below items. See you live on July 11th for the final. All right, so back to what you came here for. Berhalter's masterpiece, or lack thereof. Let's dig into it. For context behind this roster, I think it's important to first backtrack 6 months ago. When the United States Soccer Federation was planning out the calendar year for 2021, it was assumed that the four main events would be the CONCACAF Nations League, the Gold Cup, Tokyo Summer Olympics, and World Cup qualifying. On March 8th, when the US U23 squad lost to Honduras in the semifinal of Olympic qualification, this anticipated schedule drastically changed. And you know what they say about people who make assumptions. Instantaneously, Berhalter no longer had the opportunity to explore all depths of his player pool. With another failed attempt at Olympic qualification, Greg has been forced to make some tough roster decisions. In a hypothetical world where the US U23 would qualify for the Olympics, Berhalter could rely on Tokyo to test his younger players. But unfortunately, this is real life, and the Gold Cup is his last chance in 2021 before World Cup qualifying. So that is why this roster is a strange mixture of young and veteran players. To make matters even more difficult, the likes of Pulisic, McKennie, Dest, Reina have been left off this roster due to their upcoming European seasons. But also because winning this Gold Cup title no longer means contention for the Confederations Cup. So let's get to it. First things first, the shot stoppers, the goalkeepers. Matt Turner is the best American goalkeeper in Major League Soccer and is arguably more deserving than any other player to be on this roster. Turner made his first cap for the US in January camp against Trinidad and Tobago. In this tournament, Matt Turner is fully expected to be the US #1. If Matt Turner is able to continue playing like he is capable of, which is being an absolute beast, he very well could be the third keeper for the US during World Cup qualifications. As for the other keepers, no major surprises here. I don't expect Johnson or Guzan to make any appearances in this tournament. I'm slightly surprised that David Ochoa was not called in, but Berhalter also left him off the preliminary roster. If you remember, Ochoa was the starting keeper for that failed US U23 team, but he also didn't have his best tournament at the time, making a major blunder against Honduras in the semifinal. Ochoa was also fined earlier this year on the 24th of April for kicking the ball into the stands against Minnesota United. It's very possible that Berhalter elected to go with more of a veteran crew to not only teach Ochoa a lesson, since he apparently has some maturing to do, but also to potentially reward Guzan with what will likely be his last time suiting up for the red, white, and blue. Let's now jump over to the defenders where I had an issue with a couple of Berhalter's decisions. When I predicted the official USMNT Gold Cup roster in my June 23rd video, I anticipated Cameron Carter-Vickers to be on this roster. CCV is most likely going to join a new club over the summer transfer window, moving on from Tottenham, and I fully anticipated him to start at left center back. Other players that I expected to see were Julian Araujo, Justin Shea, and Jonathan Gomez. All 4 of these guys were left off this roster, and instead Berhalter included a couple of shock selections like Sam Vines and Donovan Pines. I'll be the first one to admit that I don't know a whole lot about Donovan Pines except for the fact that he's very tall, listed at 6'5". I'll also admit that his height is somewhat intriguing, and maybe it's an interesting pick for Berhalter. It appears that Pines has performed really well for DC United thus far. And we know that he was a standout defender during his time with Maryland in college, but this is international soccer, and maybe this is an opportunity for him to show the USMNT fans, including myself, why he was called up. Sam Vines still leaves me scratching my head, and I fully expected Julian Araujo to be selected over Vines. The Rapids left back has struggled at times this year in MLS, and Berhalter seems to always have his favorites. Although I would hope to see George Bellows start over Vines, Sam could very well start for Berhalter. In a past interview with Burgundy Wave, which is the SB Nation Colorado Rapids community, when asked about Vines, Berhalter stated, and I quote, "With Sam, we see an attacking fullback who is calm under pressure and able to get forward and put good crosses into the penalty box. He really helps the team in what we are doing with the ball. That is all good things," end quote. My criticism of Vines is that he lacks athleticism, and I really think he's just an average defender. Without much speed at left back, Vines sometimes struggles on the counter, and I'm afraid that he will struggle against quicker teams like Mexico, Honduras, and Jamaica. I would not start Vines in my 11, but we'll have to wait and see how Berhalter lines up in their first match on July 11th. The selection of Reggie Cannon was not a surprise for me, aside from being a huge fan of Club and Country.
Hey guys, Reggie Cannon here. If you guys are big soccer fans, I encourage you guys to go subscribe to the YouTube channel Club and Country. They got a fire promo going on right now with a special chance to win Spec Ed Panini UEFA Euro 20 stickers. They're a very good channel, very good people. I suggest you go give them a follow. Thanks guys.
I will most definitely start for Greg Berhalter in this summer's roster. I think Greg will lean on Reggie to be both a leader on and off the field. As for my 2 center backs, I'd expect Miles Robinson and Walker Zimmerman to be given the nod as starters. Let's first start with Miles Robinson, who is a very popular pick for Berhalter. The 24-year-old center back has had a great career thus far in Major League Soccer. In MLS Best 11 in 2019 with Atlanta, Robinson is no stranger to success. I would fully expect Robinson to team up with Zimmerman in this Gold Cup 11. Robinson is known for his aggressive play style in making tackles. The center back does not shy away from taking players on. Zimmerman is a very solid defender. The Nashville man was the MLS Defender of the Year in 2020 and has been named in MLS Best 11 over the past 2 seasons. Domestic play aside, Zimmerman can be looked over when it comes to the center back role for the US, but that needs to end. I think this will be Walker's tournament to show Greg what he is capable of. Zimmerman is playing for more than a starting position here at the Gold Cup. My hope is that George Bello is awarded the left back position on this roster. Bello is a lockdown defender with above average speed and elite agility. His athleticism has earned him a role on this roster. Like I previously stated, we might see Sam Vines start over Bello. But if it was up to me, which it isn't, George would be the starting left back in this summer's Gold Cup. Rounding out the defensive selections were Shaq Moore and James Sands. Moore is a player that really intrigues me. The right back will likely be a backup to Reggie Cannon, but I'm still expecting Shaq to get some time. What can we expect from Shaq Moore? Moore will provide a great deal of speed at right back. He's not afraid to take players on and is a very quick dribbler. Shaq Moore might also be the brightest player on this list, playing his soccer on the beautiful island of Tenerife, or CD Tenerife, and for that I am very, very jealous. Well, as for James Sands, he's been a standout youngster for NYCFC. James made his professional debut on September 16, 2017 as a sub for Andrea Pirlo, which is pretty cool, but has yet to make a first-team cap for the US. What type of player is Sands? James is excellent on the ball. He can slot into the midfield in a defensive position if need be, and similar to Leon Flock, who is not called on this roster, we very well could see Sands in a central defensive midfielder role. He has the ability to spread the ball all over the field, he's a great passer, and he's very technically gifted. So speaking of the midfield, this roster is somewhat all over the place for Greg Berhalter. I would imagine that many of these selections will have fans scratching their heads, so let's take our best stab at Berhalter's midfield. First things first, I am really excited to see Gianluca Busio. With Italy, supposedly, knocking on the door to offer Busio a cap, it's very important for Greg to give Gianluca some playing time. The youngest inclusion on this roster, Busio has had a fantastic year to date for Sporting Kansas City. He was the youngest player to sign with an MLS team since Freddie Adu at only 15 years of age, and it is about time that Busio gets some playing time. If Busio is able to show us why he's generating interest from Serie A teams like Parma, Fiorentina, Sassuolo, and Venice, the Italian-American, when called upon, will only help his chances of making a move abroad, if he can showcase well for the USMNT. The inclusion of Roldan is controversial. Christian Roldan is having one of his best seasons thus far for Seattle, but given Greg left Flock off of this roster is shocking to me. Christian has been a winner in MLS and has 20 caps for the US, but I think it's time we start looking past Christian Roldan. Berhalter could possibly be giving Roldan one last chance to see what he's capable of, so prove me wrong, Christian. And there he is in all of his glory, Jackson Yueill. We all know Jackson has had it rough over the past couple of months. Not only did Yueill have an awful game against Honduras in the Nations League semifinal, but he has been struggling all season long for San Jose. At times we have seen Yueill have the ability to be a playmaker both offensively and defensively, but his bad form leads me to believe otherwise. Jackson does have a lot to prove, and Berhalter does appear to believe in him. I believe we will see Berhalter start Yueill at central midfielder over the likes of Busio Roldan. I hope I'm wrong, but like Sam Vines, Berhalter seems to love this guy, and another guy that Berhalter absolutely loves, Sebastian Lletget. Lletget is a lock for any Berhalter roster. Did not originally choose Lletget to be on this roster because I thought Greg had seen enough of Sebastian. Instead, I expected to see Georgi Mihalovic or Johnny Cardosa. Either way, I have to admit, Sebastian has been a solid player for the USMNT. He's very versatile, and since he's included in this roster, he will almost definitely start for Berhalter. I'm really pumped about Eric Williamson. Eric is 24 years old, but has yet to make an appearance for the USMNT. The attacking midfielder has been solid for the Timbers, but is he worthy of an inclusion on this roster? So far this year, he has scored a goal and has had 2 assists for Portland. Aside from being a solid number 8, he is also a strong defensive player for the Timbers. Williamson will most likely be called upon off of the bench. I would imagine that most USMNT fans are intrigued to see what Williamson can do, and it's fair to say that his previous expulsions were unfair. Kelly Acosta is back, and he was included on the Nations League roster this summer. Acosta is the type of player that you can plug into any 11 and he will run all game long. In my opinion, he's deserving of the starting central defensive midfielder spot for this USMNT. Acosta is very solid defensively, and fans are oftentimes very critical of Kelly and stating that he isn't very versatile, he's only suited as a number 6. But if that's true, then he needs to own the number 6 position if he wants to be included in future Berhalter's World Cup qualifying rosters. So that leaves us with the forwards. When I predicted my roster for the Gold Cup, following the preliminary roster release, I was met with a lot of aggressive feedback concerning Jonathan Lewis's inclusion. Well guys, guess what? Lewis has been included on this roster. I will stick to my original prediction as I fully expect Jonathan Lewis to be awarded the starting left wing position for the USMNT. Doesn't make much sense, but I think it will happen. Another inclusion to this roster that seems to disturb US fans is the inclusion of Paul Arriola. To be honest, I think Paul is very deserving to get the nod and start for this group at the Gold Cup. Arriola, in my opinion, is much needed in this lineup for his veteran presence. With 35 caps for the USMNT, Paul is easily the most capped player out of this group, and likely outside of Lletget, the most consistent in terms of play for the US on this roster. To me, Paul still is a dynamic winger. His loan earlier this year to Swansea didn't work out, but I think this tournament will show us again why a championship side was interested in his services in the first place. Last week, I made a video featuring Daryl Dike, and if you've been following Club and Country, then you know that I am very excited to see what Daryl Dike is capable of for the USMNT. Dike was on fire this year with his loan to Barnsley in the English Championship. The Orlando City player is playing for not only a potential starting striker role for the US, but he is also playing for a potential transfer to Europe. DK will be starting in this tournament, and I'm intrigued to see if he can consistently score against international competition. So that leaves us with 3 more players included on this 23-man roster. Nicolas Giacchini was somewhat of a shock inclusion. The European-based striker plays his soccer for Caen in French League 2. It is fair to say that when called upon in past USMNT games, Giacchini has scored. Having 2 goals and 3 caps for the USMNT, Giacchini will be included as a striker on this roster. I'd be surprised if we see much of him in this summer's tournament, but if we do, I'm intrigued to see what he's capable of. Outside of Sam Vines, Sebastian Lletget, Paul Arriola, Berhalter loves himself some Giazzi Zardes. Greg was his coach in Columbus, and to be fair, Zardes does play really well for the US men's national team. I do fully expect DK to start at striker on this roster, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see Zardes being featured in the 11 for the US in maybe a more creative role for the USMNT. Last, but certainly not least, Matthew Hoppe. Hoppe had a very good season for FC Schalke. At only 20 years of age, he has yet to feature for the USMNT, but the fans have been calling for him for quite some time. Hoppe was included in the roster against Switzerland on May 20th, 2021, but did not play. I'd be surprised if we don't see Hoppe at least featured as a super sub in this summer's Gold Cup. I think his inclusion is something we can all agree on, and I look forward to seeing what he is capable of.